My name is Mark. I'm 46 years old, a civil engineer from Seattle. I've spent half my life designing structures that last, bridges that bear weight, foundations that don't crack under pressure. But nothing I've built, nothing I've poured my sweat into, has tested my strength like raising a child who wasn't mine. Emma was 8 when I met her. Quiet at first, guarded, the way kids are when they've learned too early that people leave. Her mother, Laura, told me Emma's father, Sean, was still around. But those words meant less than they sounded. Around meant birthdays missed, child support late, promises unkept. I thought I could fill that absence. I thought love and consistency could repair the fracture he left behind. In those early years, I tried too hard. I bought her a new bike, stayed up late helping with school projects, drove her to soccer practice even when my work site was an hour away. I remember the first time she fell and scraped her knee. I ran across the field, ready to lift her, but she turned away, crying for her dad. Not me, him, the one who wasn't there. That was the first cut. Small but deep. Still, I told myself, give it time. Kids need proof, not promises. So I gave proof. Every single day. When she got sick, it was me holding her hair back over the bathroom sink, whispering that it would be okay. When her braces broke, I left work early to get her to the orthodontist. When her science fair project needed supplies, I stayed up cutting plywood and soldering wires long after she'd fallen asleep. Every photo from her childhood, every vacation, every family dinner, every school event, has me in the background somewhere, tired, smiling, invisible. I never asked for much in return. Maybe a thank you now and then. Maybe the chance to feel like I belonged to the family I'd helped build. But belonging isn't something you can buy with sacrifice. I learned that too late. Sean was the opposite of me. Careless, charming, the kind of man who could stroll into a room once every few months and make everyone forget the months of silence that came before. He'd show up in leather jackets and expensive cologne, acting like he'd just returned from saving the world. Emma would light up the second she saw him. Her whole body would change. Shoulders straightening, voice softening, laughter spilling out of her like music. And then he'd be gone again, leaving behind another story for her to hold on to. Another illusion for me to live in the shadow of. The first time I saw her repost one of his pictures, best dad ever, red heart. I sat alone at the dining table with my laptop open and the taste of burnt coffee in my mouth. I stared at those 3 words until the screen dimmed. I paid for that phone. Paid for the data plan she used to tell the world how much she adored a man who barely remembered her birthday. And still, I couldn't hate her for it. She was just a kid. Kids don't see effort. They see excitement. They don't measure love in consistency. They measure it in attention. But I started to notice the small things. How she'd roll her eyes when I asked about her day. How she'd mention Sean with a kind of reverence she never used for me. How she'd say, "Mom, can you tell Mark?" Even when I was sitting right there. First, I thought it was just adolescence. I told myself all teenagers are cruel in passing, that the softness would return. But time has a way of stripping illusions bare. The more I gave, the less I seemed to matter. Laura would tell me not to take it personally. "She's just going through a phase," she'd say, brushing it off, her attention already half on her phone. But it was easy for her to say that Emma was her blood. I was the outsider trying to build a home on borrowed ground. I remember the first time Emma called Sean from our living room. She was 14, maybe 15. I was fixing the cabinet door that wouldn't stay shut. I heard her laugh, the kind of laugh I hadn't heard from her in months, and say, "Yeah, I miss you too, Dad." My hands stopped working. The screwdriver slipped. I sat there, listening, each word tightening something in my chest. When she hung up, she walked past me without a glance. I wanted to say something. I wanted to tell her that I missed her too, even though I saw her every day. But I didn't. I just went back to tightening the hinges. By the time she turned 16, I had become the silent machinery that kept her world running. The car that took her to school. The man who paid the insurance, the gym fees, the tournaments, the phone bills, the endless extras that keep a teenager's life stitched together. Sean was the story. I was the infrastructure, I worked overtime to afford her dreams. 12-hour days. Sleepless nights. The stress of projects stacked so high I could barely breathe. And every dollar I made, I spent without hesitation, because I believed I was investing in something more than money could measure. I thought loyalty would be seen for what it was. Love translated into action. But loyalty, when one-sided, rots from within. It wasn't all coldness. There were moments, small, flickering ones, where I thought maybe we were turning a corner. Like the night she came home crying after a fight with a friend and I sat with her on the porch until she stopped. Or the morning she said, "Thanks for the ride, Mark," before shutting the car door. Just that, "thank you." 2 words that carried more weight than any compliment. Those moments kept me alive longer than they should have. But deep down, I knew. I wasn't her father. I was the man her mother married after the one she really wanted left. I was a placeholder between chapters of someone else's story. Still, I kept building. Because builders don't stop when the ground cracks. They reinforce, they repair, they try again. I told myself that if I just stayed steady, if I just kept showing up, maybe someday she'd see what I had done for her. Maybe she'd realize that love isn't loud, that it doesn't arrive in leather jackets or disappear when the weekend's over. Love is the quiet man who waits in the car with the engine running because he doesn't want her to walk home alone. Love is the man who remembers every appointment, every deadline, every need before it's spoken. But love like that doesn't earn gratitude. It earns dependence. And dependence turns to resentment when you remind them who keeps the lights on. Sometimes, late at night, I'd hear Laura on the phone with Sean. Soft voice, careful tone. They always said it was for Emma's sake. Maybe it was. Or maybe it was for nostalgia's sake. The unspoken thread that never really snapped between them. I never asked. I didn't want to hear lies I'd pretend to believe. By the time Emma turned 17, something had hardened in her. Every gesture from me felt like an intrusion. Every attempt at conversation became an argument waiting to happen. If I asked about school, she'd sigh. If I offered advice, she'd glare. And yet, when her car needed new tires, she left the invoice on the counter for me to find. No note, no words, just an expectation. I paid it, of course. Like always, people like to think love is reciprocal. That kindness invites kindness. That giving creates gratitude. But that's not how it works, not when the foundation is cracked. You can pour your entire life into someone, and all they'll see is the hole you failed to fill. Looking back now, I realize I wasn't raising Emma. I was trying to buy my way into a family that had already decided I was temporary. Every favor, every dollar, every moment of patience was a down payment on something I'd never own. And yet I loved her. God help me, I did. Maybe not for who she was, but for who I thought she could become if someone just stayed long enough. I stayed. For 9 years I built her world piece by piece, brick by brick, believing that one day she'd see the truth of it. That love is work. That love is the man who never leaves. But she never did. Not yet. It happened on a Thursday night. Nothing special about it. Just dinner. Laura had made pasta, the kind Emma liked, creamy, heavy, with too much cheese. The TV hummed quietly in the background. Some news anchor talking about storms on the coast. It was ordinary, harmless. The kind of night you'd never expect to remember. I remember the sound of her fork tapping the plate. The way she barely looked up from her phone. The blue glow of the screen painting her face while I tried to tell her about a project we'd finished that week. A bridge expansion south of Tacoma. She nodded without listening. I kept talking anyway, because silence had become unbearable. Then, without warning, she looked up. Eyes flat. Expression unreadable. And she said it. "You're just a guest with a wallet. Don't act like you matter." Just like that. No anger. No build-up. No teenage tantrum. The words came out clean, surgical, like something rehearsed. For a second, I didn't even react. The air in the room went heavy. Still. Zach froze mid-bite, eyes darting between us. Laura's fork slipped from her hand, clattering against the plate. I stared at Emma. She didn't flinch. She didn't look sorry. She just watched me, waiting to see what I'd do. There are moments in a man's life when sound disappears. When your pulse becomes the only thing you hear. That was one of them. I could have shouted. Could have told her what I'd done for her. What I'd given up. How much of myself I'd burned to keep her world from falling apart. But all that would have been useless. Because the truth had already been spoken. She didn't see me as a father. She saw me as furniture with a bank account. I stood up. Slowly. My chair scraped against the tile. No one said a word. I didn't look at Laura. Didn't look at Zach. I just walked out of the kitchen, into the quiet of the hallway. My heart was steady, my mind empty. The kind of clarity that only comes after something dies. That night, I packed a single bag. Shirts, jeans, my work laptop. The essentials. Nothing else. I didn't want to take anything that had memories attached to it. I wasn't escaping. I was extracting myself from a place I no longer belonged. I slept in the guest room, the same one I'd renovated for Laura's parents when they visited. I lay awake staring at the ceiling fan turning slow circles, listening to the muted sounds of dishes being washed downstairs, the whisper of voices I couldn't quite make out. At 2:14 a.m., I made a decision. I wasn't going to fight for a place I was never given. The next morning, before anyone woke, I went through the accounts, utilities, insurance, credit cards, streaming services, tuition payments. My name was on all of them. My money funded all of them. With a few clicks, I started erasing myself. I called the bank, transferred the balance of the joint account into Laura's name, and told them to remove me. I left the mortgage papers on the kitchen counter with a short note. It's yours now. Enjoy it. Then I took the deed from the safe, signed my share over, and set it beside the note. No anger, no dramatics, just facts. When Laura came downstairs, she looked at the papers like they were weapons. Her voice trembled. Mark, what is this? I met her eyes, calm. Freedom, I said. She tried to speak, but the words tangled. You're leaving? Because of one sentence? She's a teenager. She didn't mean. She meant every word. I said. And so did I. She followed me to the door. You can't just walk away. You're her father. I turned. No, I'm not. Her father shows up once every few months and gets worshipped for it. I pay for everything and get silence. You've let it happen for years, Laura. You stood there every time she disrespected me and said nothing. That silence was your answer. Her face twisted. You're overreacting. Overreacting. I repeated. No, I'm reacting finally. Outside, the morning air was sharp, cold. My car sat in the driveway covered in dew. For a long moment, I just stood there, hands on the roof, breathing. The house behind me looked quiet, harmless, like it had never held any ghosts. But every nail, every wall, every inch of it was built from my exhaustion. When I left, I didn't slam the door. I didn't say goodbye. I just walked away. By noon, I had rented a small apartment downtown. A place meant for one person, bare walls and concrete floors. The kind of space that doesn't lie about what it is. For the first time in years, I heard silence that wasn't heavy. The following days came like waves. Phone calls, messages, Laura alternating between fury and fear. You can't just cut us off, she said one night over the phone. Emma didn't mean it. She's just a kid. She's 17, I said, old enough to understand what words cost. She apologized. No, I said quietly. She's sorry the money's gone. Not that she said it. The line went quiet. Then she hung up. I didn't call back. A week later, a friend from work told me he'd seen Laura at the grocery store. Said she looked different, tired, smaller somehow. He didn't know what had happened. I didn't explain. Every day I expected guilt to come crashing in. It never did. There was sadness, yes, grief, but not guilt. Because I realized something. I had been financing my own disrespect, paying for my own erasure. Every bill, every tuition payment, every luxury they'd taken for granted. It was all built on the idea that love could be purchased if I just gave enough. But love bought on credit always comes due. I started noticing the small freedoms. My paycheck stayed intact. My evenings were quiet. I could breathe without walking on the eggshells of teenage disdain. Still, there were moments when I thought about Zach. My own son. He was 12, caught between loyalties he didn't ask for. He hadn't said a word that night at dinner, just sat there with wide eyes, his world cracking in silence. I left him a note before I went. Short, written in the dark. This isn't your fault. I'll call when the time's right. I did. 2 weeks later. He cried. I told him he didn't have to choose sides. He said he missed me. I told him I missed him too. That was enough. As for Emma, I heard she was struggling. Her coach emailed Laura, no payment, no participation. Her friends planned a trip. She couldn't afford to go. Her phone cracked, no one replaced it. Sean promised to help soon, but soon never came. I saw a photo of her online once, weeks later. She looked older, tired, like the world had finally started showing her what it costs to live on other people's effort. There was a comment beneath the post. Missed those days with Dad Redheart. I didn't know which man she meant. Maybe it didn't matter. The truth was I wasn't angry anymore. Just done. Because there's a point when love becomes servitude. When loyalty turns into self-erasure. And if you stay long enough, the people who depend on your sacrifice will come to believe it's their right, not your choice. That night at dinner wasn't an explosion. It was a verdict, and all I did was carry it out. People think leaving is the hardest part. It's not. The hardest part is staying too long. When you finally walk away, it doesn't feel like loss. It feels like oxygen. I had spent nearly 10 years trying to be a father to a girl who only ever saw me as the man who paid for her life. I gave her everything except the one thing she refused to grant in return, respect. So I took back what I could. My peace, my dignity. And for the first time since I married Laura, I slept without waiting for the next wound to come disguised as love. I didn't expect peace to arrive so quietly. It didn't rush in. It crept, slow, deliberate, like a tide reclaiming its shore. The first week after I left, I woke expecting the phone to ring, expecting to be dragged back into the noise. But the silence held. And then, slowly, the echoes began. It started with small things. The unpaid notices. The confused emails from coaches and instructors, people who'd known me for years. Hey Mark, just checking if Emma's still enrolled in the summer camp? We haven't received the tournament payment yet. Should we expect it soon? Each message was a reminder that my absence wasn't just emotional. It was structural. The machinery that had kept her life running had stopped, and no one else knew how to fix it. 2 weeks later, I got a call from Laura. Her voice was sharp, brittle, the way glass sounds when it's about to break. Mark, her coach says she's suspended from the league. She missed the payment deadline. You could have told me. I didn't think I needed to, I said. You told me I didn't matter. That's not fair. Neither was the last 10 years. She hung up. After that, the calls came less angry, more desperate. She's falling behind, she said once. Her grades are slipping. She can't focus. I listened, silent, because I'd spent years holding that world together, and now I was watching it collapse. Not out of cruelty, but consequence. Emma tried to reach me next. The first message came as a text. Hey, just wanted to ask if you could help with the camp stuff. Coach says it's important. I stared at the screen for a long time. The words were polite but hollow. There was no apology in them, just entitlement wearing softer language. I didn't reply. A few days later, I didn't mean what I said that night. Still, I stayed silent. Then one evening, my phone buzzed again. Please, everyone's mad at me. I just need to fix this. That one hurt, because I could hear the fear underneath. The same fear I used to shield her from. The world was finally touching her without me standing in the way. But I didn't step in. Because this was her first honest lesson words have cost. And respect, once broken, can't be bought back with panic. The months stretched. Fall came. Rain slicked the streets of Seattle, the kind that hums against the windows for hours. I started working longer days, taking on projects I'd avoided before. I filled the space she'd left with motion. It wasn't happiness, just rhythm. One night, late, I found myself parked outside the old house. The lights were off except for one in the living room. Through the window, I saw Emma sitting on the couch, her phone in her hand, her face dimly lit. She looked small. Not the defiant girl who had dismissed me over dinner. Just a kid, frightened, lost, clutching a world that no longer bent around her. I didn't go to the door. I just watched. Then I drove away. Winter came. Bills mounted. Laura called again, quieter this time. "She wants to talk to you," she said. "I don't think that's a good idea." "She's sorry, Mark. She really is." Sorry for what she said? Or sorry she's struggling? Laura didn't answer. That silence told me everything. A week before Christmas, Emma showed up at my apartment. No warning. No call. Just a knock on the door I'd stopped expecting anyone to use. When I opened it, she stood there, shivering, her eyes red. She was holding a broken phone in one hand. "Hi," she said softly. For a moment, I saw the little girl she used to be. The one who'd fallen asleep on my shoulder after road trips. The one I'd carried upstairs when she pretended to be too tired to walk. Then the memory faded, and what remained was the young woman standing in front of me, waiting for rescue. "I shouldn't have said what I said," she began. "I was mad. Stupid. I didn't mean it." I nodded slowly. "But you did mean it, Emma. You meant it enough for me to believe you." She looked down, her voice small. "Things are hard now. Mom's trying, but Sean, he's gone again. He said he'd send money, but he hasn't." I leaned against the doorframe. "That's between you and him." She flinched. "I know. I just thought maybe you could help. Just until." "Until what?" I asked quietly. "Until you decide I matter again?" Tears welled in her eyes. "That's not fair." "No," I said. "Fair would have been treating me like family when I was feeding you, not when the bills stopped being paid." She bit her lip, nodding like she understood. But understanding isn't the same as change. It's just recognition without action. "Please," she whispered. "Just this once. I'll fix things with you. I swear." Her words hit me like déjà vu. Because they weren't new. They were the same bargains her father had made with her. The same empty promises I'd been cleaning up for years. And for the first time, I realized she'd learned that behavior from all of us. From him, from Laura, maybe even from me. I wanted to tell her I forgave her, that I'd help, that this time would be different. But forgiveness without consequence is just repetition. "I'm not angry anymore," I said. "But I can't go back. Not to the version of us where I give and you take." Her tears fell then, silent. She nodded once, turned, and walked down the hallway. I didn't stop her. I closed the door slowly, listening to her footsteps fade. That night, I sat on the floor beside the window, staring at the city lights. For years I'd mistaken control for care. Thought if I just gave enough, fixed enough, funded enough, I could buy my way into love. But you can't buy belonging. You can only give it freely, and when it isn't returned, you leave it behind. The next morning, Laura texted. She came home crying. She said you wouldn't even talk to her. I typed back, "I did talk. I just didn't rescue." Then I turned off my phone. Months passed. Emma got a job at a local cafe. I heard through Zach that she was saving for community college now, that she'd stopped waiting for Sean to send checks that never came. I didn't interfere. She was learning the language of consequence. Slowly, painfully, the only way that sticks. Every so often, she'd text me. Short messages. "Hope you're doing okay." Or got into the program I wanted. Never long. Never emotional. Just small bridges, tentative, built out of guilt and maybe, someday, respect. I answered some. Ignored others. I didn't do it out of cruelty. I did it because every relationship built on one-sided loyalty has to be dismantled piece by piece, or it rebuilds itself on the same imbalance. Sometimes I wonder what she says about me now. Whether I'm the villain who left or the lesson that stayed. Maybe both. Maybe that's fair. One evening, Zach called. He said Emma had asked about me. Wanted to know if I'd ever come back. "What did you tell her?" I asked. He was quiet for a while. Then he said, "I told her you already did. You just stopped being her father and started being the truth." I didn't reply. Just sat there, staring at the skyline through my window, realizing how heavy peace can feel when it finally arrives. Because peace isn't joy. It's the quiet acceptance that some things aren't meant to heal the way you want them to. Some wounds close only when you stop picking at the scar. Emma would grow. She'd survive. Maybe even thrive. But she'd never forget the night she mistook my patience for permanence. And I would never forget the moment I stopped mistaking sacrifice for love. Peace doesn't come all at once. It seeps in, slow and steady, like light through a cracked curtain. It doesn't roar. It whispers. It asks, what will you do now that no one needs you to save them? I didn't have an answer at first. For years, my worth had been measured by what I gave. How many bills I paid, how many problems I fixed, how many fires I put out before anyone noticed the smoke. When that stopped, I felt hollow, like I'd been erased from my own purpose. But emptiness has its uses. It makes space for clarity. I started noticing things I'd ignored for years. The sound of my own footsteps in an apartment that was finally mine. The way morning light hit the glass and scattered across the floor. I cooked for one. I sat on the balcony with coffee and no phone buzzing with demands. It wasn't joy, but it was freedom, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself to feel real. Still, every now and then I thought about Emma. Not with anger anymore, not even with longing, but with something quieter, understanding. She was a mirror I didn't know I'd been looking into. Everything I gave her, I'd been trying to give myself. Approval, belonging, proof that I mattered. It took losing her to see how much of my identity had been built on the hope of being needed. Months turned into a year. I heard through Zach that Emma was working hard. She'd stopped depending on Sean entirely. No more waiting for his promises to materialize. She was taking community college classes at night, saving every dollar she made from the cafe. I was proud of her, though I never said it out loud. Some things don't need to be spoken. Laura and I finalized the divorce quietly. No shouting, no courtroom spectacle. Just signatures, a handshake, and the echo of two people realizing they'd built a home on separate truths. She said she hoped I'd find peace. I told her I already had. When I walked out of that courthouse, I didn't feel free so much as finished. Like a long project finally complete, one you know will never win awards but still taught you how to build better next time. One afternoon, Zach came by. He'd grown taller, older in the way boys do when they're forced to watch adults fall apart. He brought a box, old photos I'd left behind at the house. He handed it to me and said, "Mom wanted you to have these." Inside were fragments of the life I'd left. Family trips, birthdays, Christmas mornings. I studied each one. In most of them, I was there on the edge of the frame, half-cropped, half-forgotten, the man who made the picture possible but didn't belong in it. I thought about throwing them away. Instead, I put them in a drawer. Not out of sentiment, but respect. You don't erase the past. You just stop worshipping it. Weeks later, a letter arrived. No return address, but the handwriting was familiar. Emma's. Inside, a single page. Mark, I got into university again. This time I paid for it myself. I'm sorry for everything. I don't expect anything from you. I just wanted you to know I'm trying to be better than before. Emma. I read it twice, then set it on the table. I didn't cry, didn't smile, just sat there, tracing the words with my thumb. It wasn't an apology in search of forgiveness. It was an acknowledgement. And that was enough. I wrote back, briefly. I'm proud of you. Take care of yourself. I never got a reply. I didn't need one. People talk about closure like it's a door you slam shut. But it isn't. It's a window you finally stop looking through. Sometimes, late at night, I'd think about that dinner the moment everything cracked open. I used to replay it like a crime scene, trying to find the second I could have said something different, done something better. But now I see it for what it was, inevitability. You can't love someone into seeing your worth. You can only show it once, then walk away when they choose blindness. I stopped chasing fairness. Fairness is a fantasy we tell ourselves to justify pain. Life isn't fair. People aren't fair. You give, they take, and sometimes they never look back. But the absence of gratitude isn't proof you failed. It's proof they never learned how to see. Zach visits often. We talk about simple things, sports, work, weather. He's careful not to mention his mother or sister unless I ask. Once, after dinner, he said, "She talks about you sometimes. Emma says you were right." I nodded. "About what?" He shrugged. "About everything costing something." He left soon after, and I sat in the quiet again, thinking about those words. Because he was right too, everything costs something. Even peace. Especially peace. There's a kind of loneliness that comes after freedom. You stop being needed, and the silence feels strange. But then you realize that being needed and being valued are not the same thing. I had spent 10 years confusing the two. Now, I wake up without waiting for someone to define my purpose. I go to work, I build, I come home. I live small, clean. There's dignity in simplicity, no grand gestures, no invisible debts. Every once in a while, I pass by the lake where we used to spend summers. The house still stands there, weathered, repainted. Someone else's laughter spilling out of its windows. I don't feel bitterness, just distance. That chapter closed itself. And yet, sometimes, when the wind shifts just right, I imagine hearing Emma's voice. Soft, careful, older now. Maybe one day she'll truly understand. Maybe one day she'll stop mistaking generosity for obligation. Maybe she'll love someone the way I loved her. Fiercely, foolishly, and finally see what it costs to carry another person's world. I hope when that day comes, she forgives herself faster than I did. Because the truth I've learned is this: forgiveness isn't about them. It's about reclaiming the part of yourself you buried while trying to be indispensable. I used to believe love was proven by endurance, that the longer you stayed, the stronger you were. Now I know better. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away and let the silence teach what your words never could. Emma calls me Dad now when she writes to Zach. He showed me once a text she sent. "Tell Dad I'm doing okay." I didn't ask to see more. I just nodded and said, "Good," because titles don't matter anymore. She can call me whatever she wants. What matters is that she finally understands who kept the lights on, who stayed when staying meant losing pieces of himself. And if she doesn't fully grasp it yet, that's fine. Life will teach her. It always does. I don't need her apology. I don't need her love. I don't need anything from the people who once mistook my devotion for duty. All I needed was this, the quiet certainty that I gave everything I had, and when it was no longer respected, I took the rest of myself back. Now, when people ask if I have children, I pause. I say, yes, one by blood, one by history. And sometimes they ask what happened. I just smile, shake my head, and say, I learned that love without respect is just endurance, and I finally stopped enduring. So tell me, was I wrong to walk away when love turned into labor? Or was I simply late to the truth that peace has a price, and I had already paid enough?